It is now my pleasure to introduce another great friend of agriculture, the U.S. Deputy Secretary of Agriculture, Krysta Harden. And I will tell you that when we were visiting out in the hallway, here's her bio. And she said, please, dear, don't read that. Because we in the soy family have been so lucky to have known her for many years. She worked with Gordley and Associates for the American Soybean Association for over 10 years, working hard on conservation issues and energy issues. The biodiesel is near and dear to her heart. She can sit here at the table and talk about it, just like she had the talking points hot off the press. Born on a farm in Georgia, was installed as the U.S. Deputy Secretary of Agriculture in 2013. So we are pleased to have Krysta, our friend, part of the soy family, here today to speak at this event.
Thank you for not raking. Oh, goodness, please. Thank you. That was very sweet. Thank you for not reading. You're a good friend for not doing that. Nothing is worse than having to hear your own bio. You realize how old you are, for one thing. I'm sorry the governor had to leave. I enjoyed visiting with him during lunch. And Mr. Northey, it is always a pleasure to be with you. I've known you a long time and enjoy the working relationship we have with your department and our department. You've been a great leader and a good friend. So it's really good. I'm going to talk about issues. I know there are things that are going on in the world today. It's kind of a crazy time for us today, in particular in agriculture. But I am going to make this personal first. First of all, I should thank my boss, Secretary Vilsack, who is letting me come, basically, because nobody comes to Iowa. He likes to come home. I know those 3 grandkids make it even a sweeter deal for him, but he cares so deeply about what's happening in the state and cares about agriculture and being with farmers. He just thinks it's an automatic that he has to be here. But when the invitation came, it's also the time of a very major meeting with the U.S. and the Chinese in Chicago today, and he is there. It's the Joint Commission on Commerce and Trade, and a lot of discussions are going on, and he definitely had to be there. So timing worked out for me. Because I have such good memories and such a strong connection to your industry and to this association. I don't go back 50 years, but I do go back quite a few. And there are folks in this room and some who aren't that I have to single out. And I know that's a bad thing to do because you're going to leave out people. But there's certain people who really helped me grow and learn about soybeans in a way that really has made an impact on my career. And certainly on the job that I do now. When I left Capitol Hill as a staffer, I had been, the last job there was the staff director of a subcommittee on the House Agriculture Committee on peanuts and tobacco. I've heard that you had a little tobacco at some point in your history, but probably no peanuts. Wade and I might be the only peanut growers in the room. So I wanted to expand. I wanted to learn about agriculture. I knew that I wanted to do something big at some point in my career in agriculture, and that I was going to really have to grow and expand my learning base and not just do southern commodities. And I went to work for John Gordley, who's been mentioned earlier, to work for the American Soybean Association. It had just closed its Washington office, and we were to be the office for ASA. And as he likes to tell the story, I filled the empty chair during the interviews. He told folks that he would hire someone to work on soybean issues at least 80% of the time. And I passed the beauty contest or whatever the test was and was hired. The first year, John made it very clear I cannot travel to a southern state. He said, you got that crowd. You understand them and they understand you. You've got to learn about soybeans from a different point of view. You got to go to the Midwest and the Great Plains, the Northern Plains, other places to learn about soybeans. It was kind of scary. I called it my tour of the frozen tundra. This girl had never seen winter like that first winter. And I came to Des Moines. I went to Lansing, Michigan, Springfield, Illinois, somewhere in Indiana. I'm still not quite sure where. I did get out, but it was a cold winter. And even though I couldn't go on the ground, I could not see soybeans on that first trip, I spent a lot of time with growers, and they were very patient with me. I think Ron Heck might have been state president. Where's Ron and Carol? Somewhere. I owe them so much. There you are. Really holding my hand, talking about the issues that were important to producers in Iowa. I learned very quick that you're the #1 soybean state. I learned a lot about you. Those memories, even though they've been so long time, this is the early 90s, still stick in my mind and my heart. The patients. Phyllis and Roy Bardell, I came out on another trip to learn about conservation. We did a wetlands tour. Ron, we probably went to your farm. I don't know. But we were in Rippey, and I stayed with the Bardells. Their little granddaughter did a piano recital for me for entertainment. I'll never forget it. Just good folks, down to earth, earnest, passion, caring about the land, caring about agriculture, caring about their communities. Not very different from the way I grew up until I saw the dirt here. I can remember so distinctly, finally came back to Iowa during the middle of the season, and to see your soybeans and your corn and that deep black topsoil. There were no cell phones in those days. So whoever I was with, I asked to please take me to a payphone. And they said, well, are you sick? You know, what's wrong? What's going on? I've got to call my daddy. He is not going to believe this dirt, this soil. There's topsoil as tall as I am, and it's so dark and rich. And I did call my daddy, and he just said, bring some home. He's a peanut farmer in Georgia, so we have sandy loam, and I don't know what kind of crops we could make if we had your great soil. But so many just really, really wonderful memories, so many good people. I hate to even, John Hoffman, Gordon, the Jorgensons, there's just so many people that impacted me as a young professional learning about Midwest agriculture, learning about soybeans. It's really a good part of my life. I'm still known as the soybean girl at USDA. If the secretary has an issue or a problem, if it's good, that's great. If it's bad, it's still me. He very much kind of holds me responsible. And that's fine. I love being identified with this industry. And before I start talking about issues, there's one person that I have to thank, and that's Kurt Leagues. And you're going to hear your name a lot, Kurt. Today, the governor talked about you a number of times. You didn't pay us at lunch. This is all from our hearts, I promise. Kurt, I think, is pretty conservative. I can remember early days us having some political talks. We probably don't agree on a bunch of things, but we do agree on soybeans, and we do agree on ag and on policy. And when we have a question or a concern or a problem, I go to Kurt. I still do. I always have, and I still do. And recently, we were talking about some issues that some of you don't want to hear, but you have to hear the good, bad, and the ugly, and it's diversity in agriculture, and how the makeup of our boards are, and how they really don't reflect what's happening in agriculture today. And the secretary, of course, again, holds me responsible for whatever happens in soybean world. And we've tried different things and talked about different things, and he said, you know, who can I talk to just to talk through these issues? We need to have a candid conversation, somebody that you can trust, I can trust, just to talk through where we go from here. I said, Kurt Leagues. He said, great, get him on the phone. Well, I didn't have time to even warn Kirk that the secretary was going to call him. I would have, I promise. But within about 3 minutes, Kirk is on the line. Being Kirk, being very candid, very straightforward. He does not just tell you what you want to hear or you'd like to hear. He just tells you the truth. And it's just so valuable. And the world that I live in Washington, you don't always get that. People will tell you what they think you want to hear sometimes if you have a certain title. They'll tell you only their side of issues, so they'll hope that you'll make a decision in their favor. It is so refreshing to have a genuine, qualified, again, person that will be helpful and that will not only tell you what is happening, will give you all sides of the issue, even when it's sensitive issues, even when it's issues that may not be as popular with his membership and the folks that he works for. He stuck his neck out and was very, very helpful to the secretary and to me. I thank him for that. I thank him for being the kind of person, and for you who he works for, allowing him to be that person that someone like me or the Secretary of Agriculture can go to get just the real skinny, what's really happening. So, Kirk, I don't want to embarrass you, but you're a good friend. And this group, this industry, is very, very fortunate to have your leadership. So I say thank you, and I want to say it in front of everybody. Thank you, Kirk. Well, I'll stop my trip down memory lane, although I could keep talking about it, but this lady's going to start, give me signs already. I'm very long-winded, and especially in front of people that I care so much about your industry and I care what's happening. I just want to say that you're a leader. This organization, the commitment you have, and it's issues that I worked on and issues I didn't work on for you, that you were always in front. I can remember going to those first ASA meetings and your board members take up like a whole row. It's kind of scary. Me, the little Southerner, not really getting it, and all of you with so much passion, so much commitment, so much knowledge, always the leaders, always fighting to be ahead. You're not followers. You're leaders. You're the best of the best. And I'm being a little risky saying that, but it comes from my heart. On conservation, I came here, Roger, to learn about conservation. I mentioned going to Roy's farm. He taught me what good steward you are and what that means for your own bottom line and how you know that and why you do the right thing because it makes good business sense and you use every tool that you have. Biodiesel, I can still talk about biodiesel like I was still the lobbyist and I was still working on it. That tax credit that was extended in the bill last night, I worked on the very first one. And Ron Heck knows how hard we worked. And I remember him making a call to Senator Grassley on a weekend to say, can we do this? Many years ago. Biodiesel is still in my blood, probably. Trade issues, almost every other row, I think maybe is exported of soybeans. You led the curve when you opened that office in China so many years ago, 20 years ago. You took a huge leap. You got out front, and so many others have followed. New uses, it's not just biodiesel, it's all the other products that you have invested in. You have put your money where your mouth is, and you have led this country. When I just got carpet at USDA in the conference room that I get to use, I asked about the soy backing, and the folks said, that's standard now. That's because of your commitment, your vision, knowing that you can do more and have more. Biotech, we've talked about that already today. The leader in biotech, how many have followed and what it means and what's to come. But you're still pushing, you're still looking ahead. And certainly global food security, knowing that we have a hungry world and we're going to have a hungrier world. We're going to have 9 billion people to feed by 2050, and you're investing now to make sure that folks will be fed. And many of them will be eating a soy product. I just thank you for that leadership, that vision, that continued effort. I go to a small church in Alexandria, Virginia, where I live now, and a great friend there as we've watched our church change, and your churches probably aren't like this, but sometimes in inner city churches, we used to be this great big place, and now we're little. We had a 60-member choir, now we have a small one, and we don't have the money, and everybody's always looking back, talking about how great things used to be. And my friend Susan Dawson says it's okay to look back, but don't stare. And I think that's just, y'all know that. You're going to pat yourselves on the back today and for a few days about how great the last 50 years have been, about the things you have accomplished, the differences you have made in this state and frankly in this country and around the world. But you are not going to stare. You're going to be looking forward. You're going to be leading because that's who you are. That's what we count on in agriculture. We count on you to be that. A dear friend asked me about being deputy and what it meant. Just this week, frankly. an old friend, a former president of ASA, who had called me about something. And I said, I'm just doing what I love for the people that I love. And you're part of that people. Thank you very much. We'll take a couple questions. Okay, excuse me.
Krysta, thank you so much for your comments and insights. Your passion is contagious. And thank you so much on behalf of the Soy family for all the work. It will never be forgotten, and we will not stare, I promise. So at this point, I'd like to take a couple questions for Krysta from the audience. If you have a question, please raise your hand. We have Amy over here and Heather over here with microphones. So please raise your hand if you'd have a question. We'll just take a couple.
They're not
And they're not shy, and you know these people. So right here, yeah.
In the omnibus bill that just passed, one of the things that we're losing some is support on conservation and in that funding. And I'm just wondering what the thoughts are there out of your office and what we can do to help in that area, because that's definitely part of what we're all about here.
Thank you very much, and it shouldn't surprise me, but y'all would be interested in conservation dollars. They're not every place I can go that I would get that kind of question. Again, the leaders that you are, thank you for that. It is troublesome to me personally. It's troublesome to the department. It's a target, conservation, the baseline for conservation, and this last farm bill is more than Entitle I. Finally, Entitle II, we're actually putting dollars, more and more dollars to help the good stewards that farmers and ranchers are, but it becomes a target, and it's a pot of money. I think it's up to us to try to get as much money on the ground as we can, as soon as we can. I'm looking at Jay. I know he does a good job here. But it is the kind of thing when you're, and I'm not supposed to tell you what to do, so I'm not, just a suggestion. When you're meeting with your delegations, talk about conservation. Don't let them off the hook. You have new members of your delegation that are going to be fresh, who are going to have not dealt with these issues at this level. They need to know your feelings and your priorities. So that is the one thing that you can do in the short term, is when you're meeting with them as they're setting up their offices, as they're talking about their priorities, making sure they understand what you have invested here in Iowa, the monies that you spend on your own farms, the difference it makes for your productivity, the partnership you have with the state and the state agencies and how well you work together, the commitment that's there, but you do need the leveraging of federal dollars to round out the full package. We will fight internally with our next budget. We're doing passback right now for the 16 budget. That's an effort that I'm very involved in. We will continue to push for funding, but it takes us all. Folks don't realize the benefit, the social benefit to the rest of the country. We talk about the 1% that feeds the 99%. It's not just food, feeding, fiber. It is also, and fuel, of course, it is also the environmental benefits that the rest of the public enjoys from what you're doing on your land. We have to tell that story better. Thank you for the question.
So part of the success of the U.S. farmer, or the soybean farmer, is our foreign market development and foreign ag services. And in a recent meeting, Ray Gasser and Wade Cowan are here, so they're part of this conversation. But sharing of dollars, the dollars that we work with the government, and then matching funds, soybean has become the #1 return on investment for the government, and yet we're kind of disproportionately lower than. Let's just mention cotton as one, possibly. It is what it is, right? So in our efforts to try to get a larger grasp on our success and our dollars, I mean, can you kind of help walk us through that conversation? We're working on it in D.C., obviously, but...
Sure, and I was in the meeting, one of the meetings at least, with Ray and Wade this week, and appreciated hearing about some of the new proposals and your commitment to the larger industry and opening an office in Africa. I think that's wise. It's very smart. Again, you're ahead of the curve. You're putting investments in that others will enjoy. Our dollars have not grown in these pots in a very, very long time. We hang on to what we have, and we're very, very appreciative of keeping those pots of money for investment. but they have not grown, and there's more and more interest. And there's interest from smaller commodities. There's interest from those who are new to the game, and they're saying it's now our turn. So competition is great. I hope we gave good pointers to Ray and Wade and the others that were in. Steve Sinskey was there and others to make sure that you're writing a very tight, very specific, very good proposal. Gone are the days, frankly, when it can be, you can rest on your laurels and say, well, we're in the pipeline and y'all know us and we do a good job. The competition is just too fierce with a really small amount of money, and with inflation, it's going down. It's not like it's increasing. But you do that. You have a great track record as an industry. I mentioned that in my remarks because you do. But you have to stay ahead of that. You have to continue to put the emphasis there and making your proposal different that we're getting from others, maybe to do some of the similar things. I'm not involved in the decision-making process. I'd probably have to recuse myself after my speech today, and probably if not before. But I do know that folks recognize this industry, the soybean industry as a whole, as a leader on these areas, and you have a great track record and you get results. And that's what we want for any dollar that's spent, is making sure that we're all accountable and that we're getting good results. Is that it? Good deal. Thank y'all so much.
Why don't you stand with me and thank Krysta? We're so glad to have her back with the soy family today. Thank you.